So next up, podcast listeners, the U.S. women's soccer team kneels. They decided to kneel because there's, oh my gosh, this just drives me crazy. So the U.S. women's soccer team playing in the Olympics decides that they are going to kneel because I presume it's because they believe the United States is fundamentally a racist country. So in Fox News, it says U.S. women's soccer team was among the squads on Wednesday to kneel before their matches in protest of racism, discrimination, and inequality as the Olympics officially got underway. The U.S. and Sweden teams took a knee before their match. An official blew a whistle and all the players dropped to one knee. According to Yahoo Sports, at least one referee on the field also took a knee. Of course, you got to take a knee. It's an opportunity for us to continue to use our voices and use our platforms to talk about the things that affect all of us intimately in different ways, Megan Rapinoe, the captain of the U.S. team, said after their 3-0 loss to Sweden. And so you can imagine that this is just the beginning of this kind of nonsense, especially at the Olympics. It's just kind of starting. But Megan Rapinoe, she's been known to do this before. Well, guess what? After that kneeing that they did at the Olympics, the women's national soccer team, they got crushed by Denmark. So what's stunning about this is how the people of the United States were so disgusted with what the women's soccer team did that they're like, you know what? I'm glad they lost. I mean, as an American, of course, I want to be patriotic and support American teams. In fact, I want someone to believe in. I want to show the world what a great country we are. But that's not who we are. I'm glad they lost. So on the Daily Wire, on the heels of stunning loss, U.S. women's soccer gets brutalized online for woke protesting. And so, as you can imagine, there are all kinds of different tweets. Matt Walsh said, "I'm so happy they lost. I was actively rooting against the U.S. women's soccer. I want them to be humiliated and embarrassed, just as they humiliate and embarrass our country." And then this is really funny, podcast listeners. So then we have the Babylon Bee, of course, which is the satire site that you can subscribe to, the Babylon Bee. They put satire up on their news site. It said, "Inspiring U.S. women's soccer team to boycott scoring goals until racism is defeated." And then, not to be outdone, the Babylon Bee decided to do a second story. And the second story is, "To improve Olympic chances, U.S. women's soccer team replaced by 15-year-old boys with it a 15-year-old boy team, but in wigs." And it shows a 15-year-old boy in a pink wig, like, how Megan Rapinoe has the pink hair, So, look, when you are representing the United States of America abroad, no matter what the capacity, you should do so as a proud American. And you should fight the fight that you believe in back here in the United States. But when you're representing us abroad, you need to be the proud American and you need to do the right thing, which is to stand for the flag and put your hand on your heart and try to win and demonstrate to people why we are such a great country and that we can have these conversations back home, but we're not supposed to have them abroad like in Tokyo. So, Brian, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
My question is, if we are such an evil country and she has such disdain for us, or many of the players have disdain, we have never held anybody back from leaving the country. You can go play wherever you want. Why don't you go play in Cuba? See how that's working out for you. Why don't you go play in El Salvador? Why don't you go play
in Venezuela,
where people are dying to get out of the country? And you know where they want to come? They want to come to America. Are we perfect? No. Do we have a history? No. But have we learned? Are we always trying to make our country better? Of course we are. If you want to take a knee on the country that's giving you everything, then I suggest you do it in another country.
Absolutely.
And I think that most Americans are upset about this. But I'm glad that the Babylon Bee picked up on it, because it is perfect satire.
So funny.
We're not scoring any goals until racism is defeated.
So, by the way, when the Euros were taking place just a couple of weeks ago, that's European soccer. Did you notice when they played their national anthem, they were singing with great pride? the members of the team. I mean, just like just belting out their song, their national anthem. And then you see this team, these incredibly gifted athletes who happen to be women for the women's soccer team, who just are they don't care. And all they do is all they have are complaints about how bad their life is and how bad they're treated and how awful it is. And because of course we've had the other stories in the past about them where they say, we're not being paid enough. The men are being paid more than us. And yeah, well, that's because more people watch the men's team. So here's my suggestion, Matt. Here's my suggestion. Brian, I called him Matt. My suggestion for the women's soccer team is let's fight like they do. Okay. Let's fight back as conservatives. And how about if we field an all male team? But the male team identifies as female and they play in lieu of the national women's soccer team. And why don't we do that? Why don't we just fight back with their own strategy? And so what we decided to do at Mark and the Millennials is we put up as an example a U.S. women's weightlifting team for the Tokyo Olympics. We spelled Tokyo wrong intentionally because we thought it was probably a trademark and thought they might try to take that down. But it's a bunch of men dressed up in Wonder Woman outfits. And it's the U.S. women's weightlifting team. And we can do the same thing for the soccer team. And we can play the same game that they're playing, which is you're just not woke enough. You're just not LGBTQ plus enough. So fine. Okay. So we're going to put these teams in and replace your team with men and problem solved, right? How long do you think that'll last?
I would like to see now that I'm looking at this picture, I'd like to see these guys play soccer in those uniforms that they're wearing there. That would draw my attention because so far I haven't really wanted to watch too much of the Olympics. But if we can get these they look like a biker gang. If we could get them out there in their Wonder Woman outfit playing soccer, that would be outstanding. I mean, that's going to bring more eyes back to the TV. I'm sure of it.
And it reminds me of Mel Brooks, Men in Tights, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We're men in tights. That would be great. And it would also be a great way to bring our country back to kind of a more common sense place, which is, look, you're advocating these crazy things. So now we're going to take your advice and replace the women's team with a bunch of men, and they can put wigs on and they can all have pink wigs on matching Megan Rapinoe.
To me, it is such a cry of selfishness. That's all this is. This is selfish. This is, I am not getting attention. I don't like it. I want you to look at me, look at me, look at me. The hell with the rest of the people in the country. The hell with the pride that we should have as Americans for being the beacon of freedom and light. And the reason why people will die trying to get here, hell with them.
Absolutely.
I don't like it. So I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to cry about it and I'm going to take a knee and I'm not going to try to score a goal. Then fine. I'm sure there's plenty of people that will take your place. Even these pretty guys that are from the weightlifting team.
In their cases, they actually wanted to win the women's soccer team, but they lost. It was just great karma, absolute karma.